And good afternoon. Welcome into Market Talk for this Monday, February 7th. Great to have you with us. Once again, I'm your host, Jesse Allen. Thank you for joining us. Find us online. MarketTalkAg.com is our home on the web. MarketTalkAg.com. Find all of our social media links there. All of our streaming sources, news of agriculture, much more. It's all at MarketTalkAg.com. Real impressive day in the grains as we start a WASD week. Let's talk about all of it. Let's bring in our good friend John Heinberg with Total Farm Marketing joining us here this afternoon. John, good afternoon, sir. And we were just chatting a little bit here before we jumped on the air, but a really nice day in this grain market here ahead of that WASD on Wednesday.
Yeah, definitely a heck of a way to start the week here. Jumping out strongly overnight, gapping higher on both corn and bean charts, and saw that money pour in. Maybe it was a little pent up energy after the Chinese holiday last week, and then obviously we continue to watch those South American forecasts, and we're looking at things staying in that drier tone and warmer tone again in that core region of southern Brazil, Paraguay, and northern Argentina. So this market's definitely got some concerns as we move into that report that these supply sides are going to get tighter. Plus, on top of that, we just continue to see good strength in the product markets, which still brings even more buying strength into these markets overall. So, heck of a move in beans today to kind of start the complex out. Corn finishing strongly higher, still not to back up to those contract highs here from last week, but definitely poking at it. And then wheat follow along pretty nicely on a nice technical buy, after we turned the corner back higher a little bit last week.
Well, and when it comes down to it, we got to verify some of these fundamentals, especially the South American weather. Once those combines get rolling more and we start to see what happens there with actual yields. But I mean, going into a WASD week and seeing this money flow in with all these weather concerns, China presumably stepping in to buy, and just as you mentioned, that global balance sheet tightening on the soybean side, real big driver, just a real big bull market, it feels like, in front of us here, John.
Yeah, sometimes you get to these levels, especially in the soybean market, where things just can hyperinflate really quickly just because nobody wants to step in front of this thing on the short side. So that, really can just let things kind of take off. We saw that probably in that last dollar rally till we consolidated there at the end of the week. Here we are again, another solid breakout. Now, it'll probably be choppy for the report on Wednesday, just because, typically we might see some pairing up going into that or even after it, so we'll have to see how that plays out. But again, realistically, we're looking at it as a demand story. We saw that large purchase of beans again this morning, 18 million bushels, split evenly between old and new crop. But, we're hearing that is for March and April delivery, and that's supposed to be when those South American beans are at their peak in terms of the harvest. So that just kind of tells us that there's some concerns out there. Those crushers in China are looking for beans, even though today's sale was unknown destinations. More than likely, it was leaning that way. And with the margins that they're dealing with on the crush side over there, they're willing to put up the price that paid for these beans at these levels.
John, weekly export inspections for USDA, they looked all right. What'd you make of those numbers today?
Solid numbers again. Like seeing them get a little bit stronger, but that bean number holding over the million metric ton level still encouraging. Just kind of keeping us on pace. That's the thing that we're watching now is, how long of a tail do we have in those soybean exports? Last year it extended out into, February, March, and April because of some of that, the late planting and the late harvest that we saw that South American crop last year. Now this year, because of the lack of availability, we might be extending that tail a little bit longer again this year. So that's going to be a big key going forward. Corn, we're still not quite into the window where things really start picking up. That usually takes place in later spring. But, having a million metric tons a week is a good starting pace. Still got a long time to look at what we're going to see for that corn export number. Again, when that window really starts opening as we get into June, July, and August.
John, you mentioned to me before we went on the air, good close for the corn market. I know old crop had some good numbers there, but even the new crop numbers, we were up moderately today. What's your thoughts with this corn market? A lot of folks focusing on soybeans, but corn had a really good day today as well.
Yeah, it was a really good day. Let's start with that new crop corn, your new contract high at 581. When you look at soybeans in November at 1416, feels like we got a little bit of value that needs to be put into that corn market. So that might be some of the reason we saw the good strength today. Then on top of that, the Climate Prediction Center came out with their June, July, August or long range forecasts and definitely have a drier bias again this summer. Right now with all these issues that we're starting to see in South America, mostly tied to beans, but we are seeing some reductions in corn numbers as well for the early corn. This is going to put a lot of pressure on us as the U.S. producers to make sure we nail a good crop just to meet that global demand. So with that, so we might be throwing a little bit of premium in. We're seeing some buyers stepping in, making sure they're securing supplies. Keep an eye on those old crop, new crop spreads. Those moved very quickly again today, picking up 9 cents on that May December spread. So just showing us too where that strength's going to be. And sometimes those bull spreads with that front month getting that big can really help pull this market a lot higher.
John, wheat largely a follower today, and I'm not terribly surprised by that. I know we got the geopolitical issues we're watching, but overall, I think wheat just maybe taking a back seat here a little bit to corn and soybeans.
Very much so. Again, we had that correction off that market, retested those lows here last week. So a nice turn on Thursday and Friday. Could see a little follow through today, and we'll have to see how it goes from here. Again, we still watch the global story. We still continue to see what's going on with the Russia and the Ukraine situation in terms of geopolitical tensions. That's still something that might come forward as we move further into the end of the month. At the same time, where we are on the trade side, it was nice to see export inspections at least up around that 400,000 ton level today. Things have been pretty poor there given the price windows that we've seen for U.S. wheat. So now it's going to come down to a couple different things that can get that wheat market really going. Besides the geopolitical, what happens with that hardware winter wheat? When we get out of dormancy, do we get some moisture down in that region? That was some of the pressure in the market last week with the snowstorm. So there's still a lot of variables still in play. But we start looking at some of the spreads and some of the differences between these grains. If corn and beans want to take off and continue to climb, wheat's definitely going to be a follower, as it's still going to be battling for some acres out there somewhere as we get further into the spring.
Battling for acres along with cotton, grain, sorghum, and others. So a lot of things to consider here in the next couple of weeks ahead. Overall, John, heading into that report on Wednesday, we see a big update here today. Whether or not we chop around or we try to make another move higher here tomorrow, say possibly. If I'm a producer, what am I doing here ahead of this report? Is anything changing in my thought process with my marketing right now?
Well, again, great value out there, a lot of risk, a lot of potential both ways. These markets are starting to get really overextended and overbought. So that makes us a very, very concerned here. And, what we get out of these numbers, there's still a lot of pieces that come together. There will be still a good crop of soybeans, maybe not as big as we thought, coming to the market here relatively soon. We're starting to see a little bit of harvest delay due to some wetness in the north, but eventually those beans will start working their way to the port and be some competition. So, we might get our one more run out here, but boy, I'm going to be start looking at some put strategies. I got some upside targets I'm kind of focusing on right now. With these USDA reports, I don't expect anything big out of this one on Friday, or excuse me, on Wednesday. We'll just have to make sure we got some good balance in the account for people. Again, here we are looking at value that needs to be protected, and you can start putting some pretty good floors underneath this thing now if you just start looking at different strategies that are out there. And again, just continue to look at your cash bids. Set yourself some disciplined targets, move the bushels when you hit the targets. A lot of base hits and doubles are pretty good to win a baseball game. And then we don't always have to go hit home runs.
Very, very true. John, let's look at livestock. Cattle today under some pressure. I would have to think that the more expensive feed prices probably weighed in, especially on that feeder cattle market today.
Yeah, it did, and actually still it performed pretty well. Fought itself off the lows and still kind of hung in there as the cattle market still has some good bid underneath of it. Now, live cattle today, we did see first notice day in the February contract, so that may have brought a little bit of pressure in. But you go look at the last couple of days here, narrowing up on that range on a daily basis. Today opened a new contract high in April, finished slightly lower. Maybe we're getting a little bit of a tired market here. The one thing that's been kind of watched, the cash market had a good week last week, but those retail values are starting to soften a little bit here. So that might be a little bit of a concern in front of this market, that maybe we've gotten ourselves a little too far out, a little bit overbought, maybe due for some pullback. But again, still overall, the uptrend is still intact. Even if we come back a few dollars here, that I still like where this cattle market can be, a handful of months down the road.
How about over in the hog trade? Good, strong day there today. We came a little bit off the highs, but still Pretty solid numbers. We got those summer contracts, well over $100 now. I mean, there's a lot to talk about in this hog market, it seems like.
Yeah, it seems to be the market of the money flow right now too. Besides soybeans, has been in that hog market. Every time we get a little bit of a signal, this thing wants to turn over or settle down a little bit, and it comes snapping right back. Retail value is up $4 today. Kind of really watching what cash has been doing. That index is really starting to run. Now we got February coming off on the 14th. So we're going to tighten that up a little bit, but then we got that big gap to the April. Here it felt like maybe we're getting a little soft, a little cautious last week, and we just kind of raced right back through those targets today. So, we'll have to kind of watch where this market is, kind of watch the calendar. When February comes off and April's in the lead, there's not a lot of time left that overvalue and now pushing close to what, $17 over the index. Might be a little bit too rich for that April contract. Summer hogs, I'm still looking at that 120 window. Like to see a little stronger close today, but we still finished with new contract high closes. That's good to see. That money seems to be target those summer hogs, and we just don't seem to have the supplies out there. And like I said, the money really wants to push this hog market higher.
John, how about the dairy market here as we start the new week? Any thoughts there?
We've had a nice little recovery again. We're pushing back to that 22 level. Kind of seems to be an area where we kind of run out of steam, especially, but with cheese trade coming back up a little bit higher, again, those higher grain prices carry over, and then, try to incentivize producers, make sure they got an extra cow or two to crank out the milk. So that's why we keep those higher price values in. Again, I'm going to get cautious when we start getting up around 22. We've seen to fall apart pretty quickly there on the historical side, especially with that difference of the cheese prices down below us. So, again, probably getting a window where producers want to start thinking about the defensive side and making sure we're locking in some pretty good price.
John, I'll leave the floor open to you here. Any final thoughts you have for us on this Monday?
These markets are going to be hyper volatile, and we're going to continue to see this all the way through probably to the growing year into next fall. Every day we're going to watch for weather headlines, whether it's US or abroad, and those are going to continue to keep things going in terms of price volatility. The biggest thing we got to really focus on now is, after we get through that report on Wednesday, then we'll start the acre talk, where we are there. Have we bought enough corn acres versus those bean acres? The ratios are leaning towards beans a little bit more, obviously, with the price where it is. It's going to be an interesting spring. So just make sure you're looking at the risks that you have in front of you on a daily basis. Ask yourself how to manage that risk and take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of you.
Well, John, I know producers need some advice with taking advantage of those opportunities. They could do that by reaching out to you and the team there at Total Farm Marketing. What's the best way to do that?
Sure, love chat with them anytime. Give me a call at 800-334-9779 or shoot me an email at johnh@totalfarmmarketing.com. And again, don't forget that website, totalfarmmarketing.com. A lot of great information for producers. Feel free to check that out or shoot me an email. Love to have a conversation with you.
John, appreciate the time as always, sir. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds great. Have a good week, everybody.
John Heinberg with Total Farm Marketing, our guest today here on Market Talk. Find us at markettalkag.com. That's going to do it for the Monday, February 7th edition of the show. I'm Jesse Allen. Have a great afternoon.